According to Bloomberg, the travel industry is predicted to grow to be a $16 trillion industry by 2033, making up more than 12% of the world economy. In 2022, Africa's tourism sector was predicted to grow at an average annual rate of 7% between 2022 and 2032 by the World Travel Tourism Council data. Technology has played a major role in this growth, making it easier, cheaper, and more convenient to find your next flight for work or play. Today, we engage with one of the companies driving that process here in Africa and look to what's coming next in the world of travel technology.
Hello and welcome to Tech into the Future, where we talk about everything that's happening in tech and how it affects you. My name is Tomiwa Aladikomo. I'm the CEO of Techabal, a digital publication that's been covering African tech for the last decade.
And I am Ngozi Madueke-Dozie. I look after partnerships for West Africa at Google. Alongside Tomiwa, I will be your guide into the world of technology in Nigeria, Africa, and the world.
Welcome back to Tech into the Future on Arise News. Let's jump into the headlines. Google is building the first subsea fiber optic cable connecting Africa with Australia. The cable is called Umoja. It aims to improve connectivity in Africa and boost resilience against outages. The cable starts in Kenya, spans several African countries, and ends in South Africa, where Google's data center is located. While the terrestrial route is complete, the underwater segments to Australia is underway. Google expects Umoja to be operational around 2026, following the typical 3-year timeline for such projects. I think given sort of the cuts that we've seen recently, anything that sort of improves our resilience in terms of undersea fiber cables is definitely welcome.
Indeed. So, yay, Google.
Yay, Google.
You may no longer see likes on X. Why? Because Elon Musk's social media, X, is planning to privatize likes, a decision that could lead to confusion among users regarding favorited versus bookmark content. This move is intended to incentivize engagement and protect users' public image, but it's unclear if it will effectively address the algorithm signal and improvement goals that it's intended to. While bookmarks offer a private way to save content, the transition from favorite to like has shifted its meaning essentially, impacting interaction on the platform. It sounds like a small thing, but it actually is a big thing when you consider several things. So when you like something, you're telling everyone that you like it. Meanwhile, that may not be your intent. So I understand that you want to keep, if I like something, people also get a lot of slack for liking something, right? So people probably want to keep the fact they like something private. But when you like something, you are also signaling to the platform that this content, is liked,
yeah,
right?
And that's a good thing.
It
has value that other people should pay attention to.
Exactly. And that's also how the algorithm as to, how they prioritize what things are trending is because it's gathering attention. And so I find it interesting. And there's a very big difference by liking something and bookmarking something. When I save something, it might not be the same intention. So I'd like to see how this plays out in social media.
I think there's a pretty big sort of set of changes and experiments that Elon Musk has rolled out on X since he took it over. It's been mixed in terms of the results.
Yes.
But yeah, let's see how this one works. Moving on, there's a Truecaller and Microsoft partnership. I don't know, how would you feel if an AI could pick up your calls for you? Well, Truecaller has partnered with Microsoft to let its AI respond to calls in your own voice. Users record a short script to create a digital copy of their voice, enabling the assistant to answer calls in their voice. The feature, which is already available to paid users, aims to enhance user experience while maintaining clarity that the voice is digital. Initially rolling out in select markets, the feature will be available to all users over the coming weeks. What do you think about this?
I don't know. I think we're now crossing several lines.
Several lines. I think we're in such an interesting experimental phase with AI where it can do all of these things. And I think it's going to take us a while to do them and decide which ones, actually, that's really weird.
Exactly.
We should stop
so just because they
doing
can
that.
doesn't mean we should.
Yeah.
Right? And I think right now we're just excited. Like you have a new toy, you're excited to see all the things that it can do.
Yeah.
I think at some point we're going to start rolling back
on some
as
of
to
these
the
things.
things that are just not
I don't know if you
necessary.
caught the tiff between OpenAI and Scarlett Johansson this
Yes,
week, where
exactly.
they replicated her voice. And it's like, yeah, they could have, and I'm sure they could have done it with a different actress, but it was clear that they were trying to make the voice sound like hers.
Like her, yeah.
And again, it's just because you can't doesn't mean you should.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Staying on social media, you can now share photos straight to your Instagram story using Meta's smart glasses. Meta has updated its Ray-Ban smart glasses with hands-free functionality, allowing users to share images directly to Instagram stories, stream music from Amazon Music, and access meditation content from Calm. Users can control these features with voice commands like, "Hey Meta, share my last photo to Instagram," or "Hey Meta, play Amazon Music." The glasses are also available in new styles in select countries, expanding their accessibility. These updates follow the introduction of multimodal AI to smart glasses, enabling features like real-time translation of text captured by the built-in camera.
You know, I really need to get a pair of these.
I know.
I'd like to experiment with them. You know,
They're actually very cool. They sound very cool.
They sound very cool. It's really interesting because the wearables battle is one everybody thought Apple had won with the Apple Watch.
Exactly.
Google tried with Google Glass a long time ago. You know what's interesting though? So Google Glass, I think, failed as a consumer product, but it is being used as an industrial product.
It is used as an industrial product.
I think in the US and in sort of a few more markets, they are using it in sort of like manufacturing sort of cases, building and sort of construction. So it has found sort of some use it is niche. But Meta, which is a very, very late entry, does seem to be having some success. And I think all the reviews of the glasses have been really, really quite sort of impressed with this new set of features and with its usability. I personally want them because there's a feature that I need. I have a horrible memory for names and faces. And so what I really want is to be able to put these things on my face and for it to tell me, that is
Ngozi.
Ngozi, who works at Google, and actually used to do a show with her. You should remember her. That's what I need, you know. So I hope that feature is coming.
We should actually get those glasses and
do an episode where we like play around with them. It's coming. It's coming. So coming to Africa, Kenya is bringing back a controversial bill to regulate the ICT industry. The bill is called the Practitioners Bill. It's now known as the ICT Authority Bill in 2024. It's been brought back to life in Kenya, despite being controversial when it was first introduced. The ICT Cabinet Secretary, Eliud Owalo's reintroduction of the bill is once more seeking to require that businesses providing ICT services be accredited by an entity within the ICT industry. The authority will decide the minimum technical credentials, relevant experience, and resources required for this accreditation. Along with the process, there will be a price to pay, which is reminiscent of the initial measure that was offered 8 years ago, but whose charges were not specified. Should the current bill pass, the authority will decide on the costs. Now, I want us to balance and I want us to talk about this story because this is an example of bad ideas that will not die. That African countries, including this one, love so very much. And so you've seen in Nigeria, attempts to regulate ICT and to make everybody register.
Yes.
You've seen this in other industries with, and I'm going to throw the bombs here. What is now Archon, insisting that every single social media ad has to be registered with them before they can go it. You can see it with things like the social media ban, proposed, the many times proposed social media ban. We have a really, really deep love of regulation that makes it harder to do business, that makes it more expensive to do business. We have a love of introducing agencies that have to fund themselves by introducing additional levies and taxes on the businesses that they're supposed to serve. And we've seen it in Kenya, we've seen it in Nigeria, we've seen it in several African countries, and I wonder what can be done to help government understand that you cannot regulate everything.
So my thing is, so I wonder where it comes from, right? It's either, and let's be frank, it's either a real desire, it's either a real fear, right, of what we don't know. We don't understand this industry. Maybe it has too much power. We want to make sure that we kind of slow down its growth so we can get better understanding. I think there's better ways of accomplishing that.
Yeah.
Or it could just be, you know what, we hear a lot of dollar signs when, you know, anything ICT, we just think there's opportunity there. Maybe we should be in there too, right? In whatever capacity.
But it is a feature of a rent-seeking state, which is essentially you've created an administration and an administrative framework that's too large. You allow anybody that comes into government to start their own agency, and then that agency has to get funded. You see that with things like the cybersecurity levy.
Exactly.
That's the NSA looking for additional funding to support itself and imposing what is effectively a tax or proposed and now disposed of.
Yes.
Thankfully. Thank the Lord. But it is essentially, you keep creating these bureaucracies that have to fund themselves. And the problem is that you are choking the life out of the business world.
But here's the thing, where we are a contradictory people, right? Because what then becomes very frustrating is we talk about how to help the economy grow. We talk about being less dependent on oil, as an example. Then we have something like the tech industry that is on its own booming because it's solving for challenges on their own privately. And then we say, no. Why is that happening? Let's go there and let's kill it.
Something,
right?
Let's kill the golden goose.
And I think that's where the frustration lies, is that there is opportunity, but then if there is no intention to do two things. One, there is a role to play as a regulator. It is to create an environment that these
things can thrive.
Right? These companies can thrive. And in order to do that is to understand, so build with them, co-create with them, as opposed to sit on the sidelines and figure out. It's almost like you're sitting and saying, how else can we frustrate the growth, which is counterintuitive because we all want the growth, right? Yeah. Because that's how we get USD into the continent. That's how we get investments into the continent. That's how we save ourselves, right? By producing and creating
for lots of young people.
Exactly. There's nothing but upside to letting this industry thrive. And so it's always very frustrating when we see any of these bills come that are obviously going to do nothing but choke.
And bringing it back industry. To Kenya, I think it's one of a number of measures in the last year in Kenya that really have been disruptive to business. They've really raised taxes in ways that have been disruptive, that have brought people into the streets protesting. And so this is not going to be a popular move either. And I hope that it dies in their Congress and that their regulators and our regulators find a better way forward, and that also the tech industries in both of these countries do a better job of engaging regulators to prevent these things before they actually...
Because the truth of the matter is that even if it's reversed, right, it's just taking so much time. We've now spent like how many weeks
energy,
trying to engage, you know what I mean?
It sends a message to the world about the investment environment in these countries.
Okay, well, moving on. Techstars-backed Black Copper set out to disrupt lending. Now it owes investors 1 billion naira. Founded in 2020, Black Copper aimed to provide collateral-free loans to small businesses, is now facing a crisis with over 60,000 unpaid loans. Despite efforts to recover these loans, the company has struggled, leading to massive default and a debt of 1.2 billion, with 200 million recovered in 18 months. The CEO, Olumuyiwa Faulkner, blamed falsified customer information and funding mismatch, but investors have accused him of poor risk management and communication. As a result, Black Copper has laid off most of its staff and Faulkner has relocated to Canada, further straining investor relations. Despite these issues, Faulkner remains optimistic about the potential of digital lending.
You know, we've talked a lot about digital lending on this show. It's a difficult and challenging business, but I do have to say that every once in a while we have to talk about founder mismanagement and business mismanagement. Indeed. Sometimes you have to talk about outright fraud. And I have to say, in a case where sort of a business is claiming that all of its loans are non-performing because of because people have falsified their information. I think there's a lot more digging that
has to be done
in that regard.
Yeah, so I agree with you, right? The truth of the matter is that it's a difficult ecosystem for us to do digital funding, especially for so many things. Although we have things in place now with NIMC and identity, so between BVN, NIN, etc., there are now things in place to make it somewhat easier to collect funds, but it's still quite tough. It's a very tough market. However, there are a lot of people that are doing it and are doing it better. Yeah. If that's the
Exactly.
the word,
Yeah.
right?
We've
So
talked to
whatever it
lenders,
is, exactly. We have talked to digital lenders, and they're telling us, listen, it's not as smooth. Maybe it's not going to happen in 5 minutes. Maybe we just do a little more. Maybe we even ask you to bring. Not collateral, but post-data checks, exactly. Or we have somebody come in as your witness, or as your backstop, or whatever the case is. But there are ways that we can get this done. When you have such a big loophole in an industry where going in that they have these challenges, then you have to look back at the founders and say, okay, really, what was your intention when you started this business?
And I got to say that it's not really inspiring of trust that you have a founder sort of moving to another country in the middle of sort of problems with this. There's a challenge here where. Because if you look at the profile of the founders, they're actually pretty strong profiles. They work in some of the biggest sort of companies within fintech before they launched this effort. And I guess it is universal because you'll say that, fraud happens, poor communication and poor management happen, and it's you see. It happens within the fintechs, but it happens within the banks.
It happens
within the banks. I think for every the stats I read, for every dollar of fraud that happens within the fintechs, you have about 9 times that amount happening within the banks. It might not be as well covered, but it is a reality. And so, I see from a regulator perspective, a lot of efforts going into sort of the fintechs and regulating the fintechs, and we've seen a lot of that regulatory action over the last few weeks. But fraud is fraud, and it is happening widely across the industry. I think that you need the combined efforts of the fintechs, of the banks, and of the regulators to really sort of challenge it and make a substantive dent in it.
And I want to call out the obvious irony that in the last one, we were being very hard on the regulators.
And now you have a case where it does feel like, there's definitely a fintech that needs
I do want to call out that irony.
That is fair.
And the truth is, and the reason I call it out is so that it's clear that the ask is not that the regulator not do their job, right? It's for you to do their job, but to do it with the clear intention of supporting the vertical, the industry. So that's that.
So moving away from fintech and into sort of a bit more hard material, DRC claims new evidence showing that Apple is using conflict minerals. The Democratic Republic of Congo, the DRC, alleges that it has new evidence linking Apple's supply chain to illegally exported minerals from the troubled East. Amsterdam and Partners, a US-based LLP, stated that whistleblowers indicate Apple benefits from these blood minerals, a term that is used to refer to minerals from war-torn countries. Despite Apple's claims of a robust due diligence process to exclude such sources, concerns were raised in a letter to CEO Tim Cook by Amsterdam and Partners and Borden and Associates, to which Apple has not responded. This lack of response is seen as an implicit admission of the relevance of the concerns. Note, DRC is rich in 3T, what's called 3T, tin, tungsten, and tantalum, critical components to manufacture electronic devices like smartphones and computers. It's a really interesting story, and we're always talking about sort of, the West requiring sort of the minerals and the resources from Africa, and the conversation about how those resources are acquired, how they're cornered, is a never-ending one. Apple's responded to this. I think this story was initially reported by Reuters, and Apple's, not responded. They actually, Reuters requested a response from them, and they haven't. But it's a really interesting debate, and I think the question is, Apple's one of the most valuable companies in the world. Are they able to sort of protect their supply chain from these kind of things, or if they require these materials, how far will they go to acquire them?
Yeah, so I think in this kind of situations, it will be interesting to understand what the process is, even in country. I'll give you a random example that has nothing to do with this. Cocoa. right? I know someone that does cocoa, and you'd be amazed that the process to get cocoa is by, soliciting women in the village, and they bring their cocoa, and they are being sold to other merchants, but also local merchants, and they eventually at some point do sell it to the West. And when you tell the story, it would be that woman in that village is a contributor to this big company in the West, but there was no direct relationship. So I have no idea. So I wonder why Apple hasn't responded, but it'd be very interesting to understand the procurement process.
Process and the supply chain.
The entire supply chain. Yeah.
That gets that there. It's a really interesting challenge.
Africa's CEOs in Kigali push for homegrown solutions to the future of digital economy. The African CEO Forum 2024 was held in Kigali, where over 2,000 CEOs, 5 heads of state, investors, and the media gathered to explore digital solutions for the continent's challenges. Organized by Jeune Afrique Media Group, the International Financial Corporation, its largest gathering since its inception in 2012. Discussions focused on unemployment, insecurity, internet connectivity, foreign exchange issues, and cross-border payment challenges. Leaders stressed the importance of collaboration between public and private sectors, emphasizing the need to remove barriers and harmonize policies.
I actually went for this conference.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you. It was really interesting. So a few things that jumped out at me. There was a really fascinating conversation that one of the conversations that kicked it off was about whether Africa is on the table or on the menu. From a global perspective. And Ralph Mapisa of MTN, the CEO of MTN Africa, was there. Imokade, chairman of the Access Group, was also there. A couple of other people, apologies, I don't remember their names at this moment, were also on that panel. But it was a fascinating conversation about our ability to control our own future, our own future as a continent. And digital came up quite a bit in the conversations, but it was a broad conversation about whether Africa is ready, to sort of take charge of its own future, of its own future. Will we develop the supply chain management and the regulatory framework so that we don't have to worry about whether Apple is taking our minerals out inappropriately or not? Will we create business-friendly rules so that actually our own companies can do well and can take it to the world? It was a fascinating conference. I will say I was quite impressed with the quality of the audience and of the people who joined it. It's 2,000 CEOs, heads of states. So really, really sort of impressive sort of group of people. Dangote was there speaking about sort of Nigeria's business. Actually, he spoke about doing business in Africa. It was fascinating. He was on stage with another French CEO. And Dangote they asked him a question about sort of how many visas do you need to travel across Africa? And Dangote said he needed 35 visas
yes, I saw that.
to travel across African countries. And he asked the French CEO, and he said he needed 5. So there's a lot for us to do to sort of make Africa sort of an easier place to do business.
So listen, I'm happy. Although we have to discuss why you went for this and I didn't go. I guess we'll have that conversation.
We'll have that conversation outside of here. Yeah.
But I'm happy you enjoyed it. I guess my frustration sometimes is some of these conversations or some of these conferences, well, how then do we then practicalize it? So it's great that we've all had this great idea. But guess what? Nothing we've said here is actually new, right?
Yeah.
That we have to take our own future by our hands. We know this, that we have the demography, we have the youth population, we have the opportunity to use digital as that catapulting force for us. We know this as well. We've talked about it, but again, and we've also talked about how we need the right regulatory environment, right? And how there needs to be better synergies between the private and public. We know all these things. When are we going to start doing them? And I must say, because I must point fingers at all of us, and then who will be doing the things, right? So it's, yes, great, we've had a great conversation, but when we leave there, like any other meeting you've ever attended where you're like, fantastic, that was a great meeting, it's of no consequence if there are no action items and there's a clear RASI chart for who is responsible, accountable, considered and informed, I think it is.
That the conference did actually throw a bit of an answer to that.
Okay, fantastic.
And it was a huge challenge to the rest of the continent. This conference held in Rwanda. And I have to say that the government of Rwanda at the conference and for the entire period of it threw a very, very clear challenge to the rest of the continent. So first of all, you went for this conference, and the reason it was in Rwanda is because Rwanda is visa-free for all of Africa. So you came in and you didn't pay $1, you got in there. I moderated sessions where there were ministers sitting in the audience, responsive, clear and able to answer the questions, engaging with the industry, engaging with CEOs from across the continent. They were open to opportunities. You could get their phone numbers, you could get their emails. If you said to them, I've got a conference, TechAbout's holding a conference in October in Lagos, you should come, they would tell you immediately, I'm available or I'm not available, I'm going to send this person to be there. There was a clear understanding among all their ministers of what their objectives were from a doing business in the country perspective and how to attract that business. I have to say that as a leadership example, it was a huge, huge gauntlet thrown to the rest of the continent. And I, for one, felt the challenge.
Fantastic.
And feel that we really across the continent must step up.
And I really hope that everybody else that was seated there felt it, especially the heads of states and the CEOs that are representing the different countries went back and said, shame on us.
We got to do better. We absolutely must do better.
We and I will tell, Nigeria likes to say that we know they carry last.
Well, we're carrying last. We're not winning this battle. Sorry to any friends I have in government, but we are not winning this battle.
We are not winning this battle.
There are stronger examples. We must do better.
Indeed.
I mean, the final story that we're going to do in the headlines today is one that we're glad to say, which is that CBN officially withdraws the cybersecurity levy.
Yes.
The Nigeria Central Bank has retracted its controversial 0.5% cybersecurity levy on electronic transfers, which was set to be implemented 3 days after it was announced. The levy, stemming from an amendment to the Cybersecurity Act in 2024, faced criticism for its significant increase in the cost of doing business and was perceived as regressive, particularly given the country's high inflation and the cost of living crisis. The withdrawal of the levy comes after pressure from labor unions and concerns about its impact on electronic transactions and the entire financial system. This decision is definitely going to be welcomed by Nigerians who rely heavily on electronic transfers, especially given the increasing prominence of digital transactions in the country's economy. Can I hear a hallelujah?
Hallelujah, indeed. But let me tell you, I refuse to be one of those people that then celebrates what was a ridiculous bill to begin with.
Fair, yeah.
Right. So I'm ecstatic. I'm happy that they're not going forward, but we never should have had this conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think that's where my challenge is. We're now all going to go out and celebrate, and we're going to clap and say, "Oh, fantastic!" I'm like, but there wasn't a job well done.
Yeah. No.
Right.
It was a bad idea.
Yes, it was a bad idea. It shouldn't have happened. We need to be doing better. And so the gauntlet is still thrown to Nigeria, just saying, when are you going to pick it up? What are you going to do? What's your next move?
To make it
Let's
stronger,
not be big for nothing.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of work to be done on the regulatory front. Lots of work to be done from the tech sector's engagement with with regulators. Stay with us. This is Tech Into the Future on Arise News. Don't go anywhere.
Today's guest is the Group CEO of Wakanow, a Lagos-based travel tech company that provides travel cards, hotel and airfare bookings, vacation packages, and advising services. They are present in 15 countries, including Ghana, the United Kingdom, Kenya, and the UAE. Since his appointment as CEO in 2019, he has led the company to profitability and maintained a steady progress towards his aspirations to revolutionize the way people travel. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bayo Adedeji.
Thank you for having me. It's
Fantastic.
a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, welcome to the show again, sir. You became CEO, as I said, in 2019, and barely a year later, we had the COVID-19 pandemic and a lockdown. How did this impact Wakanow business?
I'll give you some context. We were an unprofitable business in 2019. Okay. In 2020, we lost less money than we did in 2019. It's super counterintuitive.
Interesting. How so?
And we hit profitability in September of 2020.
Oh, wow.
The market opened up back in August of 2019, and we hit profitability in September of 2020. I had mixed reaction about COVID. Of course, unfortunately, we lost lives, and it was quite unfortunate that a lot of people died. And when you think about it, it was the biggest impact to life as we know it.
Indeed.
We took the opportunity of the shutdown. My background is in retail. I'm a finance guy, retailer, and I always tell people that you never get a supermarket that shuts down. What happens is that the supermarket has to fix its problems while customers continue to shop.
Indeed.
And COVID gave us the opportunity to have a full shutdown of our store. I think that I always often say that we all run a retail business. And the retail business is just one that the customer wants to shop you. And the shutdown during COVID, where business went to zero, at some point negative because we're paying our refund, right, and not making any money, gave us the opportunity to rebuild the business, the entire technology architecture, the entire technology stack. And we didn't sleep. We actually worked the hardest during COVID. Like I described it to my team, we were sharpening our sword during COVID. And when after COVID, that the market was opened, that our airspace, the Nigeria airspace was open in August, we hit the ground running. And since then we've been running. We hit our first time of profitability in September of 2020. And September, October, November, December was able to bring down the loss that we made during COVID, almost nailing them out.
Amazing.
Really interesting. I mean, that's a great example of not wasting a crisis.
Indeed.
What are the big drivers of your growth and of sort of like your company's revenue?
I say it in two ways. My background is retail, and I say that very often. And a lot of my experience came from outside of the country. The first thing that I would say that drove our growth was not thinking that the things that I've learned in the US was adaptable only here. And that is so big because the first thing that drove our growth was understanding the customer.
Okay.
Taking the time to understand the customer. Understanding that our people, that is the employees of Wakanow, are the ones that interface with the customer, that you need to make sure that your employees are also happy.
Interesting.
Two-way street. That you need to treat your employees almost like customers also. Make sure that they're paid on time. Make sure that the welfare is well taken care of, because they are the first customers that interface with the end customer.
Right.
And then take the time to understand the customer. Africa is built on relationship. Wakanow look for ways to deepen our relationship with our customers through leveraging technology. Like I said, there is no business, right? There is no commerce. There's no e-commerce without commerce.
Indeed.
So you can have the best technology if you don't have commerce, the core commerce, which means you buy it for 90 cents, you sell it for $1, or you buy it for 90 kobo and sell it for $1. That is commerce, pure commerce. The E on top of it is the enhancer. So we use E to enhance the commerce that we've built. And the commerce that we've built.
What you're suggesting is that it wasn't a good business prior to this.
No, they didn't have me. What can I say? It was a great business. It has always been a great business. Okay. There were fundamentals that were missing prior to when I joined, and I just came and added those fundamentals to it. It has always been a great business. It has always been, look, it was a great business. That's why somebody invested $40 million.
Indeed.
Right? Yeah. Somebody saw the opportunity. And what I did was I was the spice. There was already a pot of soup. There was already a nice meal that had no salt, had no spice, maybe curry, maybe some thyme. And I brought the curry and the thyme. But I didn't make the soup, and that's the honest truth. And I just came and added the spice to it that made it profitable. But again, technology, because what I did, or myself and the team did, was focus on the customer, drive customer acquisition, drive customer retention, and leverage technology to do it. And I'll give you a perfect example. We opened up WhatsApp as a channel to sell. Simple. It became almost 20% of our business. Just WhatsApp. What's WhatsApp? Conversational commerce. People say, add a bot behind it. I say, no, put humans first. Create the relationship, understand how they shop before you then go out and add technology.
So you've taken us through the commerce part, right? The commerce has to be fixed, and then the E is what you add onto it. So kind of talk us through what you changed in your tech stack. That's one. And then also, how did the use of technology improve your relationship with your customers? You've talked about WhatsApp now and making sure that you had a human behind it and not a bot. So it's a combined question. The first is your tech stack. What did you change in your tech stack? And then the second is, in addition to the WhatsApp example, so having that relationship through technology, what else, what other thing did you do to improve your relationship with your customers?
So I'll go a lot more rudimentary than you think I would answer this question. I'll start from the first. During COVID, I bought the most computers for the company.
Okay.
The company didn't have as many laptops.
Interesting.
We had desktops. COVID exposed the fact that people can work from home, right? You think tech stack and all this big technology, but the little things count first. Number one, can people take their laptops and take work home? Can people work from home? Can people do that? Yes, Nigeria has its own problem, internet penetration, electricity as it were, but that was the first thing I did, number one. Number two was simple technology. I remember buying a CRM that helped us to even track customers. Before, we could not track cases. We could not track emails to customer. If you were working with a customer and you left, and somebody resumed the next shift, I can't get into your inbox. It becomes a black hole, right? Number one, we fixed that. We brought technology in. We brought a simple CRM solution that helped us track that. Going back to tech stack, changing how we interface with our customer, with our website. I think we're using Angular 2.0 or something at the time. We upgraded to the latest version of Angular that was easy to navigate and be able to use on our website. Those little changes were the things that drove the business. But you see, technology is only for scalability. You see, technology is an enhancer of the commerce. And I never want to leave the commerce conversation because, again, technology just comes and pour gasoline on the fire that you already have. And helps you to scale, helps you to capture more markets, helps you to capture more customers at the exact same time, take care of them and service them. And that's what we did. Our tech stack was solid, our backend was solid, always been solid. And what we did was that we changed our front end, we changed how we interface with our customers, and where we changed the after service side of it. How can I track customers? And honestly, some of the things that we did, we didn't build proprietary technology. We went out and purchased. Which is also a challenge for the business because a lot of the technology that we find is denominated in dollars while we make money in naira. So as your dollar goes AYR right now, you're looking at yourself like, oh my God, and maybe I could have built this thing. But again, what we did was we went out and found the right technology for our business, looking at what is obtainable outside of the country that makes sense for our business and our customer shops, and we adopted them.
Fascinating. The price of aviation fuel is up. Airlines are finding it difficult to repatriate funds. It's affected ticket prices. Just before this conversation, we're talking a little bit about the price of living sort of crisis. How are your customers dealing with this? Like, how's it affected the travel business?
So I would like to do some education. The price of tickets in USD is actually down year on year.
Oh.
Yes. But the price that the customer pays in local currency is up.
So why is it down in USD?
Because there is a lot of things that is driving the price down now. Yes, aviation fuel is high. There's a lot of headwind that the airlines are facing. But as demand comes down, they're reacting to the softness into the market. You can see demand. You can even see competition, increased competition on key routes.
Increased competition recently.
Yes,
exactly.
Increased competition on key routes. Increased. But you see, it's all about the mix, right? As capacity comes into the market, think about it. If there were 200 customers that fly to London before, and we had 400 seats. That means that there were 400 seats competing for 200 customers. But now another seat has come in and added 300 seats to it. Now there's 700 seats, capacity has gone up, but the customer number didn't change. So now there's competition, and when there's competition, lots of demand and supply, the higher if supply is constant, in this case supply increased, right? It's forcing the demand curve to shift inward. Because again, the demand curve for each airline is now shifting inward because a customer now has increased optionality to fly, right? So again, on key routes, we're seeing softness on key routes. Now, if we back away from softness and go to price pre this period, the price went up. If $1,000 last year was $700K, $1,000 in March went as high as 1.9 million.
Yes, it did.
The customer is not making more money than he did last year. So the customer is technically poorer, as it were, right, than last year. That means that demand is softening. Just looking at the laws of just demand based on disposable income. So as disposable income dwindles, the customer starts to make discretionary spending also becomes something that they think about. They think about choices. I don't know about anyone, but I've started turning off the lights in my house a little bit more than I did in the past. Again, because again...
The real question is, do you turn off your freezer?
You know what? I will tell you that I might have thought about it a couple of times. Thinking about my light bill. You know, talking about the light bill. And I was thinking about it like, bro, like in my living room, I have a standing AC and I have a wall AC. I find myself using the wall AC and not the standing because I understand the cost implication. Yeah. So that means that even for those people that are a little more well off than the average Nigerian, we're making choices. And if you're making choices, then if I used to go to London to go watch a show, right, before, I would think about it now. So when the population of people that have, I call it leisure travel, diminishes, don't get me wrong, corporate travel is strong. I'm going to school is still strong, right? But the discretionary, the leisure piece of it is declining. That means airline have to react. They don't want to fly empty. What do? You drop price because demand is softening. Because when you drop price, you expect that quantity will go up. Demand curve, right? Basic demand curve. And as that happens, we're seeing them make choices. And that's why, it's a tough time because the headwind is not some of the things that we hear and the charts we hear is bigger than that. Softening demand is driving price down. Increased capacity with competition is driving price down. And those things is an headwind to the market because, again, the customer is just saying, I'm poorer than I am last year. I want to save some money.
So are you telling us that, let me ask you, let me not say what I think you're saying. How would you then describe the attitude of Nigerians towards traveling in this time? I hear you when you say that we're thinking about it, but just because you're thinking about it, your deep freezer is still on. Yep. So my question is, yes, we might be having more thoughts around, discretionary travel. Are we actually seeing the impact of this thinking? Are people actually choosing not to go? Is that what you're seeing in the Nigerian travel?
Leisure travel is down 42%.
Wow.
By our estimate.
And business travel?
Business travel is constant.
Just steady?
Steady. Because if you want to travel for a meeting because you want to go make more money, you're still going on that trip.
Yep.
But what we've seen is softening across board in leisure travel. Students, and there's a lot of headwind. Let's talk about visas a little bit. The UK changed the rule on dependent visa. So before, if 6 of us used to go, now it's just one person. Automatically by that change of that rule, right? So again, there is a lot of headwind that is coming into that business. So student travel is kind of down when you think about it, because again, the dependents that were going with them has slowed down. Movement to Canada is down. We've seen movement to Canada also down. So as you see those movements being down, now do people just jump on planes to go out to buy pizza? And I'm not talking, and I always want to say this because I hate the laws of false equivalence, that there's still some folks that can afford it. But we're talking of the average Joe that would go to London once a year. And you remember, average travel is 1.1 times a year. And I'm focused on international. Right. I'll come back and talk about local, right? That folks are getting on planes and not getting on planes internationally as they used to be. But local is up.
Well, you took us there, so let's discuss local.
Yeah, I'm there already. Local is up, and it's telling us how to embrace local and teaching us that we should.
And what's driving that?
Capacity is increasing in local. We have new airlines springing up,
of course, yeah.
Which is always a factor. That means that there's a little bit of pressure on pricing, right? We're seeing some pressure, even though the average price of local is up. Our roads are still a little bit unsafe. So again, it makes smarter sense to get on a plane if you have business outside of your local domain, and there's an airport where you're going to. It makes sense to get on a plane.
Interesting. So tell us a bit more about your business from a revenue model perspective.
Oh God, our business is built on mass market. We make money by volume, not money. We work very hard to not price gouge. That's why we don't make significant margin on each transaction. Okay. And the way we've thought about it, and that's why we are like what we call meta search of this market, because people check us to benchmark with their local travel agency, and I say, why are you benchmarking? Buy from the guy, just buy from wakanow.com. Because again, what we do is that we thrive on volume. We thrive on driving that. Our business is built on sell more to make more. It's not sell, and as we sell more, we find ways to lower the price. On local, for instance, our local flight is up right now about 100%. And why? Because we're doing things that people, oftentimes our competitors can't do. We're doing deals with the local airlines, driving price of local airline down, and so that we can drive volume. The more volume we sell, the more money we make. And actually, the economies of scale of that is that we're using our technology to do more, to process more. So the cost that you now need to allocate to fewer tickets, we're allocating it to more tickets, and that's why we're always the best priced in the market. I always say that sometimes we don't win all the time, but we win most of the time. And when you call our attention, we have something on our website called Price Match, where people can actually send us that I found it cheaper somewhere, and we match it and beat it. Again, it's a confidence that we know that we have the best supply, we have the best pricing, and that's how we win.
Looking forward, what's changing in travel, like over the next 5 years, next decade?
So I'll talk about world, I'll talk about Africa, because I think it's totally sometimes not aligned or going in the same unison direction. The same direction, but not in the same time frame. The world is changing to the world of AI. Artificial intelligence is becoming a major driver in the world of travel globally. Our UK business is leveraging artificial intelligence to do some very creative stuff out there. Artificial intelligence is not as pertinent for us here in Africa. Why? There is not a lot of OTAs. OTA means online travel agency. In Nigeria, there's about 1.5 of us, right? The others are half.
I love it.
Right? But seriously, and I say that on the online space, we don't have a viable competitor locally in the whole West African region. The only place I have a competitor that is a solid online competitor is South Africa.
Interesting.
So if I want to build AI,
I feel like I should name some competitors, but you know what? I'm just
you know what? And when you name them and I tell you the insight behind it, we are not really competing. Competition means investment in marketing, investment in technology, having the scale, having everything that you need at the cost and the customer volumes. We're the largest travel agent, online travel agency in Africa. Period. Hands down. Hands down. By volume standpoint. Now, what does that mean? AI needs to observe the market, observe behavior, and use that to infer pricing. If I'm only observing myself, AI is not as important to me as it is to the next guy. So what is important to me is ease of shopping, relationship with the buyer. How do I create relationship with the buyer? How do I make sure that I know the customer?
No, but the question is, what changes over the next sort of 10 years? Like how do you see this industry evolving?
Number one, payment.
Okay.
Payment is nothing but critical to this industry. And that's why all the CBN rules and the things that are changing is very important to us. Very important. We're paying attention to it because payment is important. Payment is still clunky today. And there is still a trust factor in payment. I know I'm digressing now, but there's still a trust factor in payment that is important. I'll give you an example. Customers will book online and then walk into our travel centers to pay us. And the man will tell you, I just want to see the person I'm giving my 2 million naira to.
Fair enough.
Because again, if he transfers that 2 million naira and he doesn't get his ticket, he feels in his mind that, who do I hold? Now, there's still a trust factor where in America, if you use your card and something happens, you go back to your bank, right? And then you get indemnified. Right? Yeah. Those are the things in payment that we are working on to enhance, because the future is how do we create happy flows for customer, where you don't have to drive down to a center, where you don't have to do transfers. Another thing is a customer makes a booking online, right, for his wife, and then goes to a bank and pays you. And there's no connection between the name that paid you and the name of the wife that made the booking, and the reconciliation is a mess. That's the future. How do we synchronize that? Now, another thing that I talk about the future is enhancement of visas through technology. Okay. To know that, look, you have a visa to the UK, you have a visa to America, you're not a risk to any country in Africa. How do I get you there automatically? That is the future, where we create like an e-visa network, where I know that this individual is this is the person. I have data on the person. I know who he is. I know where he's been. I know that he's not running away. He's not going to run away in Senegal, or Senegal does not require a visa for Nigerian. I'll use a country difficult to get, South Africa. Right? He's not running away in South Africa because, again, he's there for business. He has gone to South Africa multiple times. That is the future. To create an e-wallet for visas, those are the things that we know is going to revolutionize. And then eventually, maybe in the next 5 years, we will catch on to the AI bug.
Interesting. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. It's been fantastic to have you.
Pleasure.
And don't go anywhere. This is Tech into the Future on Arise News. Welcome back to Tech into the Future on Arise News. We've just spoken with Mr. Bayo Adedeji. He's the CEO of Wakanow. And it was a really interesting conversation about the way they survived COVID and really changed their business quite radically. I thought it was interesting how sometimes technology, what do you think as technology change, is as simple as making sure people have laptops so that they can work from home rather than desktops. So it's like it's tech, but it's pragmatic little things that you need to like solve, in order to make a business work.
I think it was that they didn't just survive COVID, right? It's almost like they had an opportunity to go and sharpen focus.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, like you said, they used that crisis very well. So as COVID was ending, they were back with, new energy, with new laptops as an example.
New laptops, new technology. I liked even just the CRM to allow everybody. And so, again, interesting. I think actually he was really a point he made is, look, technology enhances. And if used right, it really enhances your business. So he talked about people working in silos, and if this person takes his laptop home, or if this person shuts that thing on their computer, nobody else has access to it.
Right.
And then they fix the CRM, and so everybody in the business has access to the same information. I think a lot of small businesses, a lot of non-tech businesses can stand to use that thinking. It's like, how do we make our business more transparent? How do we use technology to solve simple coordination problems within the business and enhance our outputs? I think that's a good lesson there.
Yeah, and I think it's also knowing when and when not to use technology. So he says, listen, we now have even as simple as WhatsApp, right? We've opened up WhatsApp. That's a way for us to, we get 20% of our sales from there. But you know what? We don't have a chatbot there. We actually have humans there because we still want to keep some level of
like the actual relationship
going. So I think I find it interesting how they are using technology, but very intelligently as it works.
Pragmatically.
Very pragmatically as it works for them and the kind of business they're trying to run.
Yeah, I think there's something that you sometimes see CTOs do is they fall in love with the tech for the
Yes.
tech's sake, and they want to use the most advanced possible solution.
Yes, indeed.
It's like everybody's talking AI now, right? We're going to plug AI into everything. In fact, we will not do anything unless it's AI. And sometimes you just have to look at your environment and you have to look at what are the problems they're trying to solve and make sure we're using the right tool to solve this problem and to actually move things
Just
forward.
always knowing your why is very important. Why are we doing it? I think one of the things, and this is one thing you're going to hear on and on again, is payments. We still haven't fixed payments. In a way that we would love to.
Given how many people are working on it.
Yes, given how many people are working on it, given how many unicorns we have, payments are still an issue when it comes to e-commerce. And I think not only is the payments, like just making sure the payment goes through, there's still a trust issue, especially when you consider how expensive an airline ticket is. If I'm going to shell out anything north of 300K. I want to know exactly where my money is going. I want to make sure that ticket comes to me. I don't want any questions. You know what I mean? So I find that the truth is to get the trust portion of it right, you have to get the tech part of it right.
You get the tech right. I think that broadly as across the country and across the continent, you're still going to see a lot of online to offline, back to online behavior because of the level of education, because of the level of trust, because sometimes the tech still fails. And so, it's like you do a transfer, 300K goes missing, 1 million naira goes missing. Again, to trust systems, how long does it take your bank to refund the money? Because it's going to take 7 days, and I was supposed to travel this week.
Exactly. I don't have that. I don't have another 1 million
extra,
to pay.
I got that 1 million that I was not using to give them while I wait for that one to come back. So I think interesting. Quite a lot of very pragmatic points about the use of technology and the way sort of like we solve problems. I thought what was utopian, and that was kind of really interesting, was when he talked on the future part about the idea of just using the data that we have to solve some of our problems with visas across the continent.
Exactly.
And
I like that too.
It is interesting. I wonder if our governments are pragmatic enough to actually sort of like use this data in this way. And it's like, well, we've got your travel information. You've done 10 trips over the last, 2-3 years. You've gone to the UK, you've come back. You've gone to the US, you've come back. You've gone to Ghana, you've come back. You've gone to Senegal, you've come back. I can give you a visa to South Africa or a visa to Mauritius and know that you will come back. And I wonder, considering like just how much information gets requested from you when you apply for a visa, or you travel, or you go through any sort of border airline border point, you think, yeah, governments have enough information to actually be more pragmatic about this?
I would think we're taking it far, right? I think if we even had, if there was a service that every time I went to apply for a visa, I could go to a Wakanow, for instance, that has all my travel.
Just download all the information,
they want to know where have you traveled the last time. The very simple solution. They want to know where you've traveled the last time, what kind of visas you've had. If there was one repository where I had all that information, that would be a service. So if not getting e-visas or getting me visas on time, it just at least makes the application process
less painful.
less painful. Indeed.
No, absolutely. Thank you for joining us on Tech into the Future today. My name is Tomiwa Ladikomo.
And I am Ngozi Maduka-Dozie. Join us next time as we take you into the business and impact of technology in Africa, how it's changing your world and how it's changing the world around us. Stay tuned on Arise News.